All right, so I've sliced my audio. I have some trigs in the sequence. It's pretty cool. What I like to do right now is maybe add some drums to complement this and look at some more of the track parameters that are available to us. So I'm going to move over to track 8. Remember, I have static machines over here that are loaded with some drum sounds. I'm going to change the playback mode from slices to slots. So I'll hold function, press up, go up to slots, make sure that I'm out of my grid recording mode by pressing the record button, and now I can see the 4 samples in my static slots. So I want to quickly just sequence a little drum beat to go along with this, and then again, just talk about some of the different track parameters. But if I look at the sequence setup right now, the scale setup, I hold function and press scale setup. Every single track is using the same amount of steps. Every track is going to use 32 steps, which is the equivalent of 2 bars. Now, I don't really want to sequence a 2-bar drum beat. I'd rather have the drum beat just be 1 bar while my slices play for 2 bars. In order to do that, I need to get to the pattern settings so that I can change this method, and then every track can utilize whatever steps that they want. If I want to do that, what I have to do, now that I'm in this screen here, if I hold function and press edit, this is bringing me to the pattern settings. Where it says scale mode, the normal scale mode means that every track is going to use the same amount of steps. But I can change this, move my arrow key over here, and change it so that the scale mode can be different per track. When I hit yes, now let me back out of here by pressing no. I'll hold function and press my scale setup again. Now it looks a little bit different. So it says scale, but it's telling me this specific track. Track 8, the scale length is 16 steps. So this is going to basically repeat every bar. But now we also have a master length. I move my arrow over. So the master length is 64 steps. So that means that every track after 64 steps will start over at the beginning, regardless of how many steps that they're playing for. Now these steps don't have to be multiples of 16. We can do some very interesting polyrhythms. If I put my cursor under the first number, I can change this to basically any number that I want. It can be 7 out of 16 steps just for this one track. However, let me go back, and I think 16 out of 16 makes the most sense. We also have a multiplier over here, which will change the length of each step. So when it's set to 1, each step is worth a 16th note. If I multiply that by 2, each step will be worth a 32nd note, so we'll move through that much more quickly. 1/2 means each step will be half of this amount, so each step will be an 8th note, so we'll move through the sequence that much more slowly. If we use the multiplier on the master, then that means that all the tracks are going to have steps of either twice this, 32nd notes, or half that, which would be 8th notes. We can also do triplets as well. If we go to 3/4, or what is it? Yeah, 3/2. So you can do some very interesting things here. But again, all I want to do is make it so that I can sequence my drums for 16 steps. So we got that there. I'm going to go ahead and play this. And I'm going to just sequence these drums using the grid recording mode. I know that my kick is right here. Let's go ahead and get into the grid recording mode. Hold my first step, put the kick there. I'm going to copy that. Hold this, press copy, paste it there. So I'm basically just doing something that kind of mirrors what's happening with the slices. I should have my clap here on the 9th step. So I'm going to hold this down and select my clap. Cool. All right, now one thing I'd like to do here is I want to put some hi-hats in here, but have them play at different lengths and repeat at different rates. Since I can only play 1 sample per step, I'm going to go to track 7, which is also utilizing my static machines. The short hi-hat is already assigned to this track, so I don't need to sound lock any sound. I don't need to actually put specific sounds on certain trigs. Every step I enter is going to be that close hi-hat. Now let me go ahead and mute track 1. If I want to mute track 1, there's a couple different ways I can do it. Right now I'm going to hold function, and then if I press the track 1 button, that mutes it. Track 7 has my hi-hat. I'd like to make it so that the hi-hat plays at a different repeat rate, a different sync rate every single time. If we look at the track parameters that are visible right now, at the bottom next to rate, RTRG stands for retrig. It'll re-trigger that step based on the re-trigger time, which is right next to it. Let me play this again. And I'm going to hold down this second hi-hat that I've entered. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the retrig amount and the retrig time for this step. This is one way to do parameter locking. We talked about the ability to lock certain parameter states to specific steps. So here's two parameters that I want to change their status at different steps in this particular track. So I'm going to hold down this trig here. Whatever thing that I want to parameter lock to this step, I simply just adjust the knob. And we see the graphics are inverted now. So it's going to retrigger this step 4 times, and then the retrigger time is right here. So let's play this and hear how that sounds. So we can hear this one is playing 4 times. It's playing at half a step length. So even though it's repeating 4 times, it's basically done by the time we get to this step here. If I hold this down, I'm going to change the retrigger time. Now, if I just turn the knob, it's going to go to a lot of values in between this half step and a full step. If I want to jump in more relevant values, I can push this knob in before I turn it. So I went from 1/2 step to 1 full step. So it's going to re-trigger this 4 times, and each time it plays, it's going to play for a step length. Now I'm going to take this next step, hold this down. I'm going to make this re-trigger, say 8 times. So we hear that's playing twice as fast as this one. I'm going to take step 13, hold this down, and I'll make this re-trigger maybe 6 times. And I want this to be some sort of triplet value. So I'm going to increase the re-trigger time, but I'm not going to press the knob in this time. And if we go to 0.667, that's essentially 2/3. This gives us more of a triplet sort of timing. All right, cool. So we parameter lock the retrigger and retrigger time parameters for the hi-hat. Let me go back to my sample over here. So let's talk about some other parameters we have available to us. If I look up at the top, we talked about pitch. Well, I enabled slice. So now it says start, which slice is it going to start with? Next to that, it says length. Now, if I double tap the playback button here, I see it says length, and then underneath that, it says slice. If I adjust this knob here, knob C, it'll change it so that now the length is for a length of time. How long does each slice actually play for? Let me back out of here, and I can increase the length parameter. And with the level here, I can adjust the track level. That's actually pretty interesting. Now, we talked about the rate knob before. The rate knob can affect the pitch or can affect the way that the audio is being time stretched. But there's another very, very interesting usage of the rate knob. We can change the way the audio plays from going forwards to going backwards, and we can do this in real time. Let me double tap the playback button, and I'm going to change the rate from time stretch back to pitch. If I play this now, the default rate setting is +63. This is half of that, so it's playing an octave lower. Now, if I push in on this knob, I can turn it and adjust this in greater increments. So that's 63. If I go below 0, it starts playing backwards. Now let me go ahead and change the length setting so that this plays for the full amount of the slice. And now as I adjust this rate knob, now there's a bunch of different ways that we can manipulate this rate parameter. We can assign an LFO to it. We can assign the crossfader to it. And if we do that, we can almost treat the audio as if we're scratching vinyl. Very, very cool stuff. For now though, kind of liked it playing shorter like that. All right. Now let me see. If we look here, retrig, we talked about that. Go back into playback mode. And oh yeah, so one more thing to talk about really quickly. So time stretch, we have different time stretching modes. We have the automatic mode, which is basically going to choose between the normal time stretch and the beat time stretch. If we set this to beat, The time stretching algorithm is going to be looking more for the transients, for the volume spikes in the audio. And this is most useful if you're time stretching drums to preserve the timing of the kicks, snares, and hi-hats. If you're time stretching stuff that's more melodic, that doesn't have very distinct volume spikes, then using the normal time stretching mode is probably a better idea. If you're not sure what you should use, just leave it on auto and you should be fine. This knob here controls the transient sensitivity. So basically, how loud does the audio need to be in order for it to register as a transient or a volume spike? So if the time stretching sounds a little bit weird to you, you can adjust the transient sensitivity knob to taste, and then you should be all right. So we've got our slices playing, we have our drums playing, we've used the retrigger parameter, and we parameter lock that to some different steps. All right, so we have a better idea of how the playback settings work here for our different tracks. Now let's check out the two effects blocks and see how we can utilize these.